Hello and welcome to the Disc of Truth. I'm Jono.
And I'm James.
And here at the Disc of Truth, as you know, we talk about everything and anything. Nothing is off the table. Now, before we get started, if you have been enjoying our content, do drop us a like, drop us a subscribe. Let us know what you think in the comments below. But as that's all out of the way, let's get started. So today's episode, we're going to talk about mental health, and we're not going to make any jokes about this one. This one's a pretty serious issue. We want to take it seriously. So we think it's a very important thing. Both of us have our experiences with it, and it's something we'd like to discuss.
And I think it's important that a lot of people discuss it as well. It's something that, in the hope, we're talking about it, you go away and talk about it as well.
Yeah, there's a big thing at the moment with get people talking, get yourself talking, get everyone talking to each other to just how are you, are you why are you feeling down, what can I do to help, blah blah blah, that kind of thing.
I think it's quite mental that it took I don't know if you saw any, but they did loads of adverts for it during lockdown, didn't they? Or talk to somebody, all that, bringing out all the cliches, a problem shared is a problem halved. And that's all well and good. Talking about it is fantastic. We should have been talking about it for a long, long time, but we're here now.
Yeah, I mean, so to begin with, I think we should talk about our own experiences. So I think that's a good starting point, and we should talk about our own experiences with mental health. So, myself. So, I don't personally think I have. Not saying I don't have any mental health issues, but I've never been diagnosed with anything. But that doesn't mean anything, because I personally, my big one is a loneliness factor. So always just feeling like you're alone, like there's no one to talk to, blah blah blah. Things got better since starting a new career, having a big move, blah blah blah, that kind of thing. I haven't really felt it for the past few months now, but loneliness for me was always the thing that was getting me down. As well as that, there's whereas clinical depression, and depression is a thing, there is also things such as situational depression, which are when the situation you're in is causing you to feel down. I had that in my old job. That was crazy. It was me and James worked closely together, so much. When I say closely together, we were literally in the same room for basically the entirety of our shift every day. So we always talked, and we saw how much the job was making us feel, and it was very much a situational thing.
I definitely think that because we were both aware of that, and we both felt like we were in the same position, we did talk about it, or we knew each other well enough that we knew what the other person needed to get through. Which again, that's something that's quite sad in a way, that we had that. There are plenty of people out there who don't have that, and I know for a fact that I probably wouldn't have made it through as well as I did without you. And
thank you.
It's you're welcome. But it's sad that you had to go through that with me. But at least we both knew what page we were on. So
yeah, it was just all about, for me, the way I got through it was all about just trying to generate as much fun as humanly possible and just having a laugh. I found that even it didn't. I mean, it was a struggle, but it really did help, get through the times. So that's for me there. I mean, James, you what about yourself?
So, I've had quite a lot in my life where I've had to deal with depression and deal with mental health issues and anxiety. And I say it's quite funny, it's just the expression of it. But so when I was younger, I was in therapy and I was on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. I didn't really fully understand what was going on. I didn't really want to talk to people about it. And I thought a lot of my issues were situational, and I didn't see the point in talking. I was like, well, you're not going to fix my finances, you're not going to fix relationships, you're not going to fix all the problems that I'm feeling. And it was really, really, really difficult. And I've, over the past few years, so I feel okay now. I still have bad days, and it's okay to have bad days. You just need to understand why. So it actually turns out that there's quite a huge history of mental illness in my family. So I am going to dive into it. It's quite personal, but I think it's quite important because I'm going to talk about it. And there's a lot of people who won't talk about it. So I had no idea why I felt the way I did. And my brother had same sort of issues. And I had no idea what was wrong with us. And that's an interesting thing as well, to say that there's something wrong with us. There's not. You just need help. There's nothing wrong with you. Anyway, so it turns out, so my mum is adopted, and I had no idea about where my family came from, and I've only just recently found out about her birth side of her family, and I mean riddled with depression, suicide, and it was like listening to an episode of EastEnders. It was crazy. So my mum's mum had committed suicide. Her husband and one of their childs had as well. There's loads of stuff, and mental illness was definitely something that was in that family, and it created situational mental illness as well as a physical chemical problem. Did anyone talk about it? From what I'm aware, absolutely not. And having spoken to these people, because my mum, she turns out she has sisters. One of them's doing okay. One of them is very mentally unwell, and that's not her fault. She's had a lot of situational issues. She took the reins from the family when her mother died, and there's a lot of these heavy pressures, and it's not easy to deal with, no matter where you are in that. But I think it's important to say that it does matter what happens to you, but there is a reason for this. But talking about it and understanding is a big deal, and I feel kind of guilty in a way, and I've spoken to my mum about it, but she does understand. As soon as I found out about all the suicides and all the depression in her family, it felt like a huge weight, because I didn't know why I wasn't okay. I didn't know why some days I'd wake up and I just didn't want to get out of bed. And it's good to sort of know where this comes from and talk about it so you can tackle it in a way. So yeah, unfortunately, there's a long history of mental illness in my family.
It is it's a tough one. That it really is. But I think you touched on something that I'd like to bring up about feeling that that you can't talk about it. So I'm gonna transition over slightly into men's mental health. So mental health issues are an issue for every single person, gender, everyone, every single person. It doesn't matter who you are, what you look like. Mental health is a thing for everyone. The reason we're going to talk a bit more about men's mental health now is because there is a huge issue with getting men talking, and as both of us identify as male, it is something that we ourselves would like to discuss because we feel it is an important issue. So I want to talk about men's mental health, and you mentioned about not wanting to talk about it and not knowing who to talk to and stuff like that, and that is a huge thing. So
yeah.
there's a huge the stigma is being attacked, is being tackled. It's going to take a while, but the stigma is going away steadily. But we come from like me personally, I come from a family that I don't feel like I can talk to them about mental health issues. Whenever I had any sort of issues, I either kept them to myself and just put on a brave face, put on a smile. Like, I'd have days where I'd literally be feeling like shit, and I'd think to myself, all right, I'm about to go downstairs, put on a smile or whatever, and like you can just get away with it because no one thinks to say you're right, or no one picks up on it, and that's not their fault. That's not their fault at all. Like, people aren't mind readers. Like, people aren't mind readers. People don't know. If you don't make the first move, if you don't say I'm struggling, then how are they to know? So, but I want to talk about the reasons as to why men don't talk, to go into that. So there is a stigma. So we've established a stigma. So tying into that stigma, actually, before I go into other reasons for, there's two words, and we talked about this earlier, James. Two words,
Yeah,
and there's two words where man up, right?
Yeah. Very dangerous two words.
They are a very dangerous two words. When I was younger, I heard that a lot. Actually, not necessarily aimed at me, but it was just a general saying, wasn't it? Like
It was, yeah.
it really was just a general saying. It was just, oh, you've been you've been tackled hard playing football or whatever. Just man up and run it off.
Yeah.
Like but when it comes to mental health, so an injury, yeah, okay, injury, fine. Some of them you can just you can get up and run it off, but not with mental health. Like mental health is something that you can run from it all you want, but it's gonna catch up with you, and it's always gonna. It's never gonna go away if you don't deal with it. But man up was such a toxic phrase.
Yeah.
Because of the it translates to it's not okay to talk about it.
Talking about it. We're gonna come round to this a million times, and talking is a very powerful thing, and. Yeah, man up
I would like to say, even if you feel like you can't put it into words, try putting it into writing.
Yeah, literally anything. Yeah. Especially if, from my experience, and I have gone into details about my family and stuff, I'm not going to go into details about what my rock bottom was. And it's not because I don't want to talk about it, it's because that's very personal to me. And I've left that behind now.
You don't need to relive it.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
But from where I was, and there were multiple moments where I thought I hit rock bottom, and it kept getting worse and worse and worse. I don't want to see anybody or hear anybody hit that particular point. And a lot of things are, you can combat it, and talking about it is the way to do it. And saying man up and thinking, no, I got this, it's fine. And there are many reasons, aren't there, Jono, for manning up? And it may be, oh, well, I need to, as a man, I need to be in charge, and that whole, it's a very archaic view now, but like the man must be in control and stuff like that.
Or the man must not appear weak.
No, exactly. And I think that's another thing that feeds into mental health, actually, because we do live in a world now where it should be, I realise in some cultures and some areas it's not, but men and women should have exactly the same rights, equals. That is exactly what it should be. But even I'm still like, oh, I really wish that I was the one making the most amount of money so my partner can go off and do whatever she wants and stuff like that. I want to be the main breadwinner. I don't need to be, and that's not the culture we live in anymore, but there's still these old views that exist. And a big old view of man up, you're the man, you need to, people are looking out for you, don't let other people down, which that's putting even more weight on it as well. So, I can't talk about it because if I've got a problem, then other people have got a problem, and I can't deal with this, and it snowballs.
Yeah, absolutely. So, did you know that 77% of all suicides are committed by men?
Oh my god, I didn't know that naturally.
Yeah,
no.
so
oh my god.
So tying it back to man up as why it's such a bad thing to say to someone, or like not even saying the words man up, but using a man up style of talking to someone, or a man up style of dismissive. Being dismissive is essentially the same as saying man up. If someone tries to approach you and to talk to you about how they're feeling, regardless of gender, listen. Sometimes I think this is my personal opinion that's helped me. Sometimes I think it's best to not say anything as the person listening.
Yeah.
Okay. So when someone comes to you and they want to talk to you about their mental health, sometimes it is best to say nothing at all until they're done. Yeah. And even if you can't help, say you just sometimes just being an ear.
Yes.
Is so helpful.
I'm very, very glad that you brought that up, actually, because I think it is important. So if you're somebody who's out there and you are okay, that's brilliant and that's fine. But if somebody does come to you, if you don't know what to say, yeah, the only thing you can't do is be dismissive. And if you're being dismissive because you don't know how to deal with it, that's not helpful. And I think me and Jono will both admit that it is difficult to listen. And if you don't know or you haven't experienced this before, it can be quite daunting and quite terrifying because it is such an important thing. But listening and trying to be sympathetic goes a lot further than you think. So my mum and dad were okay when I started to be going through these issues, or at least it became more, I've spoken about it. They didn't know how to deal with me. They had never come across anything themselves before. They didn't know what was going on, and like my mum was very like, "Oh, what have we done wrong? How have we?" I'm like, "Don't ever turn it around onto something for you as well. It's all about you. You need to make it about this person because they have been incredibly vulnerable." And just little tip for if you don't know how to deal with someone, as Jono said, just listen.
Yeah.
Because the biggest thing that they've just done is talk.
Yeah, and that is such a hard thing to do in the first place.
Yeah.
So like just being an ear is so important. So I want to talk about some other reasons as to why men don't talk. Okay, so a few big ones. So people saying they've learnt to deal with it. I personally was a big one of that. Whenever I was feeling down or anything like that, I just felt like I've learned how to get through it, so I don't need to talk about it. That's wrong. Talk about it. Next one. I don't wish to be a burden to anyone. That's so huge. That's so huge because that kind of ties into man up again. Like you don't feel like you can talk to someone because either they're going to be dismissive or you feel like you're causing them trouble. And if someone feels like you're being a bother by talking to them about their mental health, they're the wrong person to talk to in the first place.
That's true.
Like, I mean, you should always try and talk to a mental health professional. But as a start, like, just try and talk to someone you trust.
Yeah, if you've got a good circle of people around you, letting them in on that and talking is again, it's back to talking, isn't it? It is a huge thing.
I mean, it's all about communication. It's all about talking. It's never going to go away if you don't express yourself.
No, exactly.
So, if you feel embarrassed, that's another one. Embarrassment. Like, you should never feel embarrassed talking about your mental health. It's get over the stigma. Get over the stigma. The only way to eliminate the stigma is to combat the stigma. To rebel against the stigma. To talk. So
it's not easy, but it's coming from somebody who's done it. It is worth it.
I don't want to admit I need support.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That's a huge one. That's like, again, if you need help, you need help. Don't be ashamed. It's like if you're at work and you're struggling with something or you make a mistake, and are you going to hide it and let it potentially snowball and get worse?
Exactly, yeah.
Or are you going to ask for help and resolve that issue? And like 90% of the time, people will thank you for it. And or if it's something that you don't understand and you're asking to help, again, people will respect you for that because you've taken steps to make sure that you're doing better at your job. So it's the same with mental health.
That's an interesting point, actually. Comparing it to that, and comparing mental illness as well to physical illness as well. If you broke your leg and you didn't ask for help, well, that's you'd say, why would you leave that? You'd think that was silly. And it's breaking the stigma that mental health is exactly the same as that. It is something that you need to be tackling.
Yep, exactly. It's so important, so important. I don't want to appear weak, At I'm brushing over this one slightly because we have discussed ties into Man Up, and we've discussed Man Up quite a bit. I have no one to talk to, so you and some cases it does. Yeah, some people will feel they don't have anyone to talk to. They might be living in a new area and not know many people, or whatever the situation might mean, so that they don't have anyone to talk to. But you do. There are places you can go. There are, again, if it does get bad, talk to a mental health professional, talk to your GP. Like, GPs aren't just there to help with physical illnesses. Like, they are not just there to help physical illnesses, they are there to help you with everything. So, again, even if you feel like there is no one, there will be someone. You might just have to look. So in regards to, we've been talking about why men don't want to talk about their mental health, but we haven't really discussed what affects men's mental health. So for you, James, personally, in regards to your mental health, if you don't mind me asking, what is it that affects your mental health? Like, what causes you stress and worry and triggers bouts of depression and stuff like that?
So, for today, as in, now and stuff like that, money is something that is a situational thing that always stresses me out. I'm constantly terrified about providing, and I'm constantly terrified about and I need to know where every penny's coming from and everything. That's something that I think is a constant worry. I think that's the main one. There was, obviously, in the past there was lots of other issues, situational and just, I want to say chemical, I guess is the best way to put it, medical or whatever. But today, if you were to say, what's the one thing that, because there are some days I'm kept up at night, or I'm really stressed. The only situational thing right now would be money, and that's been a constant throughout my entire life.
Okay, all right. So, financial worry or financial pressure is a huge one. So the top three are work-related, financial, and health. So these are all very very important. Also, seasonal things can be a factor as well. Like Christmas can be a stressful time for people because it does tie into finances, and work tends to get a bit harder around Christmas time.
And I can imagine, as I'm not a parent at the moment, and I can imagine around Christmas time there's a lot of extra pressures as well. If you are, it's a lot of. I don't know how you feel about this, but just talking more generally, like pressure to have an outside view of everything being fantastic. I think that seems to be quite a big thing. So I discovered something recently. I didn't realise. I can't remember the exact terminology for it, but it's to do with poverty, and it's like relative poverty versus other forms of poverty, and you can have situational ones. So if you live on a row of houses, and every single person has 10 million, like a 10 million pound house, and you only have a £1 million house, you're apparently counted as impoverished in that area. Like, I know there's if you're actually in poverty, like physical poverty, and you can't afford food, that's a stress and everything. But these situational society ones that we've kind of put on ourselves as well, I think outside image is quite a big thing,
Yeah.
So just to sound as really pathetic. So when I first came to work, Jono, and I bought myself a shiny, wonderful Jaguar, was I not an unbearable little shit? And then when it got written off, was I not like the most miserable human being ever because I didn't feel like I was as big of a man as I used to be?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I can't even you really were obsessed with it, and it was a little strange.
But it was I loved how other people looked at me and how it made me feel. And I think that's but that's another, that's one thing I hadn't, we hadn't talked about before. How other people view you must be a really stressful thing.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've really, yeah, absolutely. I don't think I could disagree with that one at all. I think how it's so hard to like it's so hard to not be judgmental. So
Yeah, very.
so when that like you're being judgmental, the thought always goes through your head. How are people seeing me? So it's such a hard, yeah, that's such a hard thing. I'm really glad you brought that one up, James. That's a really big one there. Um, there's no real way to to not worry about that either. It's literally a case of you just have to try and put it to the back of your mind, that one, and try to not care so much about how people think.
Yeah, but I guess that also ties into the whole man up of things, isn't it? And it depends how far you go with it, because you can be okay with who you are and you can be okay with where you are, but it does take effort.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and it also ties into like health concerns as well, because like I like, are you happy with your physical appearance? If the answer is to that is no, then you might be thinking, you know, how do people see me? Do they see the issues with my physical body that I see? And that in itself causes a problem. So I wanted to bring us on to another point now. So we're working our way through. So we've talked about the reasons why men don't want to talk. We've talked about what can cause issues with men's mental health. So I want to talk about how to spot signs. So again, no one is expecting you to be a mind reader. But there are physical issues and behavioral issues that are signs. So if someone's persistently worried, if they tend to be down quite a lot, you tend to get the feeling that they're quite sad, that you have, or these aren't just signs for you to spot, these are also signs for yourself, like
distancing as well. If you've got someone who's part of a group, or if you've got a group of friends and someone is starting to become more distant or not wanting to be a part of it anymore.
Yep. So if you find you have difficulty concentrating, your mind's always going on to something else, then, and again, that is another sign. If you're constantly feeling tired and fatigued, like how James said, it was so difficult just to get out of bed some days, and I know that's a huge thing with depression. Is just the ability to get yourself out of bed is a huge first step when you have depression. And then also, you can actually have physical symptoms as well, like shortness of breath or lots of headaches. Headaches can be caused by by stress, shortness of breath. Just if you're tired, you're fatigued, shortness of breath.
Well, it is your body in a shocking way to put it. Your body breaks down.
Yeah.
That's just what it is, and you'll start to become, more susceptible to illnesses. You might have skin problems as well. You might come out in rashes or spots or anything like that. It's with some mental illnesses, it can physically be triggering or triggered by chemical imbalances as well, and it literally can change you.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the signs and symptoms I just listed, those are universal. So of course they're going to affect everyone. There are some things that appear more common in men. So those are substance abuse, alcohol, drinking, drugs, that kind of thing. That's such a big one. Such a big one there. I mean, alcohol is never the answer. Drugs are never the answer. You can drink, you can try and drink away your problems, but they're never going to go away. They're just going to return when you're sober.
Or cause more problems if you end up becoming, you rely on the drink.
Yeah.
And again, unfortunately, seen it in my family.
Same.
It's yes, you have as well, and it's so destructive. It's replacing one problem with another problem, and it's that doesn't solve anything.
Yeah, it literally has caused the breakdown of relationships, as well. So you end up alienating people from the abuse because of the substance abuse. So it's just alcohol or drugs is never the answer.
So from what I've seen, and I'm going to ask you, Jono, as well, if this is something that you've picked up on. So let's use alcohol abuse very, very briefly.
Okay.
If you've got, if you are depressed and then you start using things as a crutch, as coping mechanisms, the way you solve it, you can never solve that root problem. You can't do that straight away. You kind of have to chip down these layers that you're adding. So if you're trying to protect yourself by going, well, I've got this and that and that, and trying not to solve that problem, all you're doing is adding more layers to get through. If there's someone out there, fair enough, but I've not met anybody who's used alcoholism as a defense mechanism that couldn't, who wasn't able to sort alcoholism out first. You kind of have to regress, don't you, to get to the core of the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really are just adding more layers to the problem to solve.
Yeah, you're not solving the problem. You're only causing another one for yourself because you have to get over the addiction, and then you have to combat the issues that you're having.
And I say addiction is a whole other subject, isn't it? It just gets its claws in you and it doesn't let go.
Yeah.
My aunt, my aunt on my dad's side, we don't really talk ever, but she's a heavy alcoholic, and we've tried everything, but a couple of years ago she was told she had 6 months to live. Did that stop her drinking? No. It's a miracle she's still alive at the moment, but that's how hard it can be. You can literally be told you're gonna die, and some people will be like, okay.
Yep. You can be told you have 5 problems, 4 of them are caused by alcohol. So if you stop drinking,
the alcohol, they'll say no.
You can solve 4 of those, and then they carry on drinking anyway. Or they make it 4 days, and then they just carry on. Anyway, so...
Oh yeah, but you're not talking from personal experience at all.
Yes, no, definitely not. Right, so the next one, anger and irritability. So it's kind of, I don't need to go into detail on that one really. It's pretty self-explanatory. Working obsessively. So trying to run away from your problems by throwing yourself into work.
Because work is a problem you potentially can solve, isn't it?
Yep.
It's a good feeling to solve a problem.
Yeah, very true. Sleep issues. Sleep is a huge thing. Getting being well rested and having a good night's sleep is so good for mental health. Like so good. But it's not easy. It's not easy at all. But it's so good if you can. And then reckless behaviour. Are you throwing caution to the wind, doing whatever the hell you want? Maybe you shouldn't. But it's not that easy. So, moving on again. Onto, I think, what will be our last sort of topic of discussion for this for our chat today. So, coping strategies. Again, talking to someone is the most important thing you can do. That is the start of the process.
Yes.
Talking, saying that the hardest thing you can ever do regarding mental health is say, I have a problem. Not necessarily those words, but admitting that you need help is the hardest thing.
Starting the healing process, as it were.
Yeah. So just some coping strategies here for you. So relaxation techniques. I mean, just bit of breathing, meditation, anything you could do to just sort of keep yourself calm and more relaxed. Stuff like that. Exercise is really good, actually. Really, really good. So when you're moving about, your brain releases positive endorphins, So the body's natural mood booster.
I'll testify to that. After a bad day at work, I would occasionally come home and I would have some alcohol, and that was not a good coping mechanism. But I did change it to there was a 24-hour gym, and I would finish work at 3 a.m. and I'd get in the car and I'd go run on a treadmill for an hour, and that was a huge help.
Yep,
that was good.
So you mentioned alcohol. Next one.
Yep.
Cut down on alcohol.
Hey.
So yeah, drinking will always remain a temptation when you're feeling sort of stressed and upset. But
so if you can try and remove that as an option.
Yeah, but alcohol has depressive qualities, so it doesn't help. So if you cut down on alcohol, and then like James did, exchange alcohol for exercise. Not the best trade, I admit, but it's a start. It's a start.
If it works, it works.
Yeah, and then the most important one, socialize.
Yeah.
We as humans are social creatures, and it helps to interact with your friends and family. I know it's not easy, but try and remain close to someone. Try and remain socially engaged with someone who is close to you, because that person can be a lifeline.
Yeah.
And then also, we've mentioned it before, talk to a GP, talk to someone you trust. Like, those are the big ones there.
Yeah. I use this phrase a lot now. It's okay to not be okay.
Yep.
And once you kind of get that through and you're like, yeah, no, it's okay to talk. And I will always say that, and Jono was quite rightly put as well, like talking is the big thing about it. And we say it like it's easy, and it's not. It is actually like the most difficult thing.
Yeah.
But honestly, like, I look back and how I coped with everything like that. If I'd have just talked, would that have solved my problems? No. Would it have helped me? Absolutely. Situational issues, talking about it isn't going to help, but you will feel better about it. I used to think it was rubbish. I did not understand, why talking about things would matter. And now I preach that massively. Anybody who isn't okay, I want them to talk about it. If they feel safe about it, of course, as someone in a group of friends, you can't force somebody, because that kind of has the opposite effect. But yeah, being there as a lifeline, it really is. I can't say how important it is.
It can't be stressed enough how important it is. So I do believe that brings us back to the end of the episode. So just as a what we're going to do. So we've talked about quite a lot here. We've talked about something quite heavy. If you are struggling, if you do need help, I'm going to pop a link to some useful sites and things in the description. Please, do use those if you feel that you need to. You can message us. We've got links on Twitter and stuff like that, so you can message us as well. But do, as we said before, we've stressed so much. Don't feel like you can't talk to someone. There will always be someone, even if it is a complete and total stranger, such as Jono and James on Disc of Truth. That at least is a start.
Yeah, exactly.
So as I said, I'll put a link to some things in the description below. But if you have enjoyed our content, then please do drop a like, drop a subscribe, comment in the box below. Let us know what you think, and if you've got anything that you'd like us to discuss, then feel free to let us know.
Yeah,
we'd love to hear from you. But from us, thank you very much for listening, and all the best to you. See ya.
Take care.